think it's the linchpin because, you know, I was talking to a group just like this the other day, and I mentioned about no child should leave the third grade that's not at or above third grade reading level. I had a teacher come up to me afterwards, and she said, I've got 4 boys, unfortunately, in the 4th grade. None of them can read beyond 1st grade level. And that's wrong. That cannot happen in South Carolina. These kids become discipline problems, they become dropout problems. But to do that, I think one of the ways, and I'm not saying we need more funding for education, what I think we need is adequate funding for education. And let me give you a perfect example. Have y'all seen us plate of spaghetti before? I know you have. That's the way funding for education is in South Carolina. We've got 46 counties, 85 school districts, and 64 different funding sources going into those 85 school districts, funding those 46 counties. There's got to be a way that we can make sure those dollars make it to the classroom where they're much needed. For every dollar in South Carolina that we spend on education, only 44 cents makes it in the classroom. 44 cents. And if you look at some of the school districts, the way they list their teachers, which are not really classroom teachers, I think it's closer to 38 or 39 cents. You know what the national average is? 65 cents. We've got to mandate, we've got to ensure that those dollars make it to the classroom where they're needed. We need to cut back on some of this confusion when it comes to funding, making sure those dollars get in there, and we need discipline in the classrooms. My wife is a 1st grade school teacher, ladies and gentlemen, and I see it firsthand every day when I see her pack her lunch on a Sunday and she's got a brand new pack of paper and a brand new pack of pencils, and I say, baby, isn't it wonderful that your school district bought those supplies for your children? And say, no, honey, we bought those for our children. And my wife is not the exception to the rule. She also had a discipline problem in the 1st grade. It took her 4 months to get that child out of the classroom. Not only was it terrible for the child because the child had emotional problems and needed help immediately, the other 21 students, it was a tremendous disruptive factor. So helping our teachers with these problems, ensuring that the child gets the help that they need, but they get them out of the classroom so we can take care of the kids that are there now. That's just a couple of the things, but I think it's a start in the right direction. Yes, sir.
How would you go about dismantling budget control board?
Are there any other questions out there? You know, part of it gets back to what Rick is talking about. It's working with people. It's working with the Bobby Harrells and the Glenn McConnells and the Hugh Leathermans and the Dan Coopers and coming up with a plan. A dear friend of mine is named Hal Clyburn. And Hal Clyburn's on the budget, the BEA, the Budget of Economic Advisors, Board of Economic Advisors. And Hal is sitting down with me today to look at structural changes of how we budget in South Carolina. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it's broken. I mean, literally in some cases we're operating back in the 18th century. And the last time I looked, we were in the 21st century. But having a definitive plan and bringing these people on board, and ladies and gentlemen, that's how I want to go. I mean, when we came up with our Putting South Carolina Back to Work plan, this was a plan that we shopped all over the state. We talked to business leaders, we talked to academic heads, we talked to legislators in the House and the Senate, we talked to community leaders to say, what do you think we need to do to move South Carolina forward? And we had a confluence of ideas. So when we put this plan, Putting South Carolina Back to Work plan, forward, this was not my plan, this was our plan. And I think that's how we need to govern, whether it's the Budget and Control Board, whether it's legislation on infrastructure or education or how we budget, bringing these people together to get buy-in so we can take some of these things and have some doable things. I'm not looking for the perfect, because sometimes we're the victim of looking for the perfect solution when we need a doable solution that can move South Carolina forward in the right direction. But I think we can do it. It's a great question. Yes, sir.
What's your position on drilling offshore South Carolina?
Great question. If you look at my Palmetto Energy project, I'm a big proponent of offshore exploration. The National Petroleum Institute, NPI, says there's 4 billion cubic feet of natural gas off our coast. If you liken the royalties that the Gulf Coast states are getting to South Carolina, it could be $250 million per year that we could use in our economy as we see fit, no matter what we wanted to spend it for. Now, what I would propose is 70% infrastructure, 20% law enforcement, and 10% to roll back into energy alternatives, renewables, things like that. But it could be tens of millions of dollars and tens of thousands of jobs, literally, in South Carolina. NPI says up to 2,200 jobs. And the neat thing about it is South Carolina can control that permitting process, so we can make it as strict or as lenient as we want to. And I would certainly say that we would have certainly no rigs within the site of South Carolina, because the offshore natural gas reserves are further out, and no hard and fast infrastructure on land within 20 miles of the coast. So I think it could literally be a win-win for South Carolina. And part of that, again, is nuclear. I was up in Florence Darlington Tech, or at Florence Darlington Tech about 3 weeks ago, where they're training our next generation nuclear reactor operators, our next generation nuclear reactor welders and pipe fitters. Those ladies and gentlemen can start at $75,000 a year. Start at $75,000. That's real jobs, that's real growth, that's real economic opportunity. And cap and trade, that lowers the carbon footprint in South Carolina. We can take these spent nuclear fuel rods, recycle them, reprocess them, whatever you want to call it, in South Carolina, which again is real jobs and real growth, and makes our environment safer too. So I think it's a win-win. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, what's your opinion of the VAT tax or the regular flat tax?
Yeah, the gentleman asked about the flat tax. I'm a co-sponsor at the federal level, and I think at the state level, I'd love to see something like that. I've talked to a lot of experts. Unless we have a flat tax at the national level, it might not work quite as well at the state level. But I'm willing to work with anything, because we do need, and I think it's job number one, comprehensive tax reform in South Carolina. Absolutely.
What about the VAT tax?
Well, you know, now they're talking about a VAT tax to pay for this health care bill.
What's your opinion?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all, because they've got to make up this shortfall somewhere. I mean, this health care bill is a $600 billion tax.
Gresham,
Yes, Bill.
we'd like to thank you for coming out.
Thank you, sir.
We'd like to thank you folks, and we want to wish you the best
Thank you, sir.
this coming election.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.